Well, we'll call the International Falls Kitchen County Airport Commission meeting ordered for Wednesday, November the 26th. And this meeting is being recorded for rebroadcast. So everyone's aware of that. Is there anyone in the audience that has something to bring the attention of the commission? Seeing not, hearing not, we will move to the minutes of the October 29, 2014.
We move on to minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Commissioner McBride to approve the minutes. Second by Commissioner Nettleman. Excuse me. Discussion on the motion or the minutes? All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Thank you. Go to the financial statement. Kara, you want to lead us through this? We had revenues for the month of $346,000. Is that correct? Grants? Is this from Susan or?
This is from Betty's.
Well, this is from Betty. Okay. And expenses that $350,000. I see the expenses. Oh, you're there. Okay. Work. Last page down, 300. Well, that's 352,000. Journal was out of balance. Oh, I'll tell you, this thing is getting worse. So let's see, we have revenues and we have expenses that show $352,528. I guess I would ask a motion to approve the expenses so the bills can be paid.
The expenses, it doesn't look like I put it in my packet, but I have a copy here of November bills, which is totaling $37,425.67.
These are claims and this is what, this came from Betty?
Yes.
I'm sorry, so I don't know where this 352 comes from, but, so we have airport commission expenses for November of $37,425.67. Pass these around, let everybody take a look at them and decide if you want to pay them.
Is that including the engineer's cost for this? That doesn't go,
It doesn't sound like there's.
the engineering cost, that was the different budget, that's on very small.
Yes.
Some months they don't have any
Bills,
bills.
we're not billed, but
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, these don't reconcile, which is a problem, and I'm not comfortable approving this. But rather than hold it up, I would be willing to offer a motion to approve contingent on the chair's approval, so you
So sit down and get this.
get it straightened out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I wouldn't support it.
Well, if we can just pay those claims that we have, and then we'll get a system.
Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chair, I agree with Commissioner Kravlic, I mean, we can certainly look at the bills, but this, for the average person looking at this, it's hard to make any sense out of it. I really am struggling to, and I know Kara and I have been talking about reformatting a lot of this. It's a clumsy process, and then it goes through the city, and they format it in a certain way. But for the average person looking at this and trying to get a sense of reflecting where we are in this,
I guess, and by gosh.
and to be honest, I mean, it doesn't look, it looks bad, not cash in bay, we're still in a significant amount.
We could do that.
Mr. Chairs, I would second Commissioner
Thank you.
Pavlik's with, I would like to add part of the motion to pay the bills, but we need to reconcile the financial report.
That would be a priority.
We need to pay our bills.
But we also need to understand where we are. That's.
It just makes me very uncomfortable.
It should be a simple way to put what our balance is, what we're paying, what we've got out in grants, so we know we've got that coming in, so we can look at it and know that somehow, someday we're gonna catch up on. That's a huge amount of money for the city putting out for our expenses. Makes me as a city councilor very nervous.
There, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Please.
Keaton's coming, I mean, the way we're doing those bills now, is a huge improvement. They're clear, concise, you know what's balanced, what's not.
One page, you
Yeah.
see where everything's at.
Yeah.
This is.
Easier for the public to understand too, including it.
Including us.
Okay, we have a motion to pay the claims of $37,425.67. And with the understanding that there will be a reconciliation of the financial statement for the December meeting. Further discussion with regard to the motion or the financial statement? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Claims are paid, and we will have a reconciliation next month. Thank you. Go to the engineers report.
Oh, boy.
Yes,
We're,
just moving this morning. Gotta keep
Good
moving in
morning.
cool weather.
All right. Well, how about the CIP? Let's start with that. MnDOT has a new, as of last year, pass those around, has a new format. I think what we looked at last month was the old version. Now they have a new online process where you can actually go in with the username and password and go in there and interactively update the CIP. So with Kyra's help, we pulled this together, and I wanted to have you guys take another look at it. It's what's in the system right now, so we can still make changes. It's not locked. I was actually just working in it last night. You can still get in there, make some changes, but I kind of wanted to go through it with you to make sure that it represents the discussions that took place last month, and then also to maybe segue into our proposed funding scenario for the terminal project over the next 3 years. So as you look at this, you can basically disregard the first three. If you look under status for those first projects, the skid steer, then 2013 and 2014, if it says anything other than CIP, we can't touch those. So basically, when it says under grant, that project's under grant. If it says MnDOT review, MnDOT's reviewing it. There's nothing really we can do with those projects. So you can disregard and move all the way to 2015. And what we call there is Terminal Expansion Remodel Phase 1. And the number that you see there, the $7.4 million total project cost, is essentially the total project that we would need to leverage the $4 million in guaranteed entitlement dollars that we have going for federal fiscal year 2015. So we would anticipate, and Destin and Bob, if you guys want to chime in on this, we would anticipate this to be what we're calling the first phase, or the base bid for the project, as we've been talking about lately. The FAA has been pretty firm with us that we can't, or they would recommend that we didn't plan for any additional funding, at least on that first part. So going with the schedule that we presented last month, what we would be doing is bidding this project hopefully in April, this piece of it in April, trying to get it out the door early in an effort to get more interest, to get more bids, working with the construction manager, which I know is an item on the agenda today, and to getting a project that would be that $7.4 million. If you go into 2016, this is actually state fiscal year 2016, but still utilizing federal fiscal year 15 funding. We have a phase 2 in there. that one down there is the 4.6. The total combined would give a full building, phase 1 and phase 2. But we'd be looking for discretionary dollars for that second phase. If that doesn't come through, then we just wait for the next year to do that piece of the project. You also see that the passenger loading bridge is pulled out there. That's another project that we would want to get discretionary dollars for too. So this, even though it says 2016, these are all projects that we would anticipate getting federal funding for like in August of 2015. But we wanted to separate it per the ADO's request because none of that funding in the federal side of things, that $2.8 million that we show, is guaranteed. So if we don't get it, we still have a usable unit of work underneath that first phase.
So we're trying to capture all the use all the entitlement dollars and have different alternates that could capture discretionary funds should they become available, but they don't hold up that first phase. So we're gonna apply for a grant early in the year. We should hopefully, we talked to the ADO, get the first grant for the entitlement dollars by June. And so we should do the design, be able to award a contract and start construction in June of 2015. And then if the discretionary funds become available, which we wouldn't know until the end of the federal fiscal year, so that'd be around September time, then we could award the second phase if those discretionary funds became available. And if there was enough funding to cover that. Does that make sense?
So the second phase is tearing down the old building and adding
Well, it's still to be determined yet.
okay, so we're not clear about the second phase? Yeah.
Well, we have our ideas about it, but that's what we're gonna work with the construction manager on the second phase. So the second phase would involve either a remodel of the existing terminal or a complete tear down and rebuild.
But the first phase will get us all our passenger services minus
Yes.
the jet bridge.
Yes,
Yep,
I
that's
think,
the
the number we're using is like 90% of the operation.
Well, I would say more than that. I mean, if you could probably break it down and figure out how many people go through customs and versus how many people go through your regularly scheduled commercial flights. And my guess is that it's 95% of your passengers are going to be in the new facility as opposed to 5% that are coming through customs, and maybe it's even more than that. So that's our goal. Now, the $7.4 million number is a difficult number because unfortunately that first phase also needs to contain all of the mechanical and all of the utilities for the whole building. So there's actually quite a bit of work for the whole building that has to necessarily happen in that first phase. So it's not really, even though if you looked at the square footage, you might say this is a 60-40 split or a 70-30 split. In some ways, there's going to be even more in that first phase. So the 7.4 is difficult, probably to make those numbers work. That's something we're going to have to work really hard with the construction manager we select to figure out how to make that first phase happen with that allocation.
Okay, then can I go back to my question from last week is, we're talking about federal funding and Andy Picos told us that they will not pay for the redesign. So where's the funding for the redesign coming from?
Out of bonding.
Okay, we'll actually spend the bonding money on redesign. Okay. I just need to know that.
Yeah.
And the assumption is that once construction begins, we get to a phase and there's a usable unit of work, that the FAA is not going to leave us hanging, that they will. That's the assumption, right? That once you begin, they're not going to leave us.
That is the assumption, yes. But should we never get discretionary funds, the entitlement dollars are yours to use as you choose. And so this could be, you could say there would be no discretion or no discretionary funds, and you would just be using your entitlements. So
Yeah, the idea behind it is that the FAA wants to make sure that we have a product at the end of phase 1 that if there was never another dime put into the project, it would be serviceable for all your operations forever. So we want to make sure that we accommodate that. That being said, Andy was clear that once you start a phased approach, which is what we're doing here, your priority ekes up in the system a little bit, because they do understand that you have 3 phases. And if you look, to explain that third phase, one of the things that Andy did suggest that we do, and this goes to your concerns, Thor, is in 2017, which is federal fiscal year 2016, right now we show a phase 3 for the terminal. What that is the additional concrete pavement that we need to accommodate the facility, the snow removal activities, and all that other civil site work that we need on the air side to make sure that we have everything in place for the operations up there. Instead of having that be an apron expansion project, if we put that as a phase 3 for the terminal project, understanding there's that connected action there, the funding, the opportunity to get funding above your entitlement dollars increases there too. So we have a 3-phase project, 2 related to the building, but that third phase is the civil site work on the air side that we need to do as well.
And the phase 2, so in the existing terminal that we would remodel or tear down, is mainly comprised of customs and the airline or the airport offices, and potentially also the TSA office or the weather. So we'll have to work with the construction manager to see which side we want to put that on. But these are, as you know, not eligible areas to use entitlement dollars or federal funds, but we can, and we can't use bonding for that either. We have to use all the bonding in the first phase. But the build out of the customs is federally eligible. So we can use that to build out raw space. It also has to be, Andy's words were, you have to get the certificate of occupancy for the building. So I think it actually works in our favor to have it as a standalone project, because you have to put, I think, a lot more into it to get that certificate of occupancy. So that should be federally eligible of the customs side. And not everything within customs is eligible. So I mean, that's back of house is not eligible, but anything that touches the public is.
So will we need to do some remodeling of the old terminal in phase 1 to accommodate what we're gonna have over there?
Yes, we'll have to tear a part of it down. And again, we're jumping ahead with our ideas, so we need to work with the construction manager to see, you know, what he may have, or they may have some different ideas there. But our idea right now is to tear down a portion of it, and then build that phase 1 of the terminal, and then that would be a temporary wall, and you connect those 2 buildings temporarily, and then in the phase 2 would be a complete connection, or maintain that temporary connection, which would then be permanent. So we have to work through that.
For Commissioner Rogner's question about the funding stream right now, if we are drawing bonding dollars, this board is committed to the project, essentially. If for some reason we run into a snag, this board would have to pay the state of Minnesota back, correct? If we spent so much of it and then the project did not go forward for some other reason?
Well, we would use all the bonding in the first phase. Or are you saying if the project doesn't
I'm just saying,
build?
if for some reason we can't, the bids come in and we can't meet that threshold of what this board has said,
Yeah.
and we've started to spend bonding dollars, we would have to pay back the state of Minnesota that money.
I think the bonding money was listed as both remodel and construction. So
Correct.
I don't know that
Yeah.
would be a problem.
And I think to speak to that, you know, one of the other funding opportunities we have for the redesign, if you will, is state dollars. So we could actually go through the redesign utilizing state dollars, and once we get the bids, I mean, that certainly is a decision point based on how they come in. At that point, the bonding dollars could go towards construction.
So
If you,
you saying we could be using state dollars like MnDOT,
Yes.
rather than bonding
Correct.
dollars
Yes.
as for
Correct.
this redesign?
We have
that- we have that
Construction
1.5.
manager and this type
Yep.
of stuff?
Yes.
yes.
Because it
And-
makes me nervous to enter and to start spending state bonding dollars. When we
You're
don't have a
saying
total
you're
project.
nervous if we spend bonding dollars for the redesign and then nothing ever moves forward.
Then we would have to pay the state
Yeah,
back that
we
way.
could certainly use the MnDOT funds as well.
I would feel much more comfortable doing that.
I think that would be the right approach, because then the bonding dollars would occur after you've made that
Yep.
final decision based on bids.
We have a ballpark figure for redesign.
No, we don't. And the reason we don't, Gail, is because we don't know what we're designing.
Or not doing, you don't know where we're going.
And so our goal is select a construction manager today. The commission will select the construction manager. We will begin working with the construction manager as soon as we can organize them. Hopefully right after Thanksgiving. We are gonna sit down as a team and decide and look at what are the possibilities. And we'll come back to the December meeting with those possibilities. And then we would come back to the January meeting with contracts. So, but I believe we're gonna work with the construction manager to come back with their contract for the December meeting. And by that point, we'll get the commission's blessing on how we're gonna move forward with the project. And then we know what we're designing, and then we can put together our design fees. And then we come back in January with those contracts. So then we'll have a much better idea. A lot of the work that we've done, we're hoping to reuse. Reuse as much as we can.
Well, in our conference call with the FAA, and it's certainly been a thought that I've had all along, that we were never gonna build this building without discretionary funds. We did not build the original building that we have out there now without discretionary funds. If we had not received discretionary funds, that building would not be standing. And so I believe I said that to Andy and Tracy on the phone from FAA that day. So hopefully they got the message, but if we need to get some leverage, I guess maybe now is the time to call our congressman's office. He's on the transportation committee, and maybe he needs to make a call to the FAA and ask them how they might be able to help. Further, Commissioner Nevin and I met with Port Director Tony Jackson and had discussions with regard to the use of a new facility, and he certainly is counting on having more space, as we have outlined, to be able to accommodate larger planes coming in for clearance. Is that your impression?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question? How many large planes come in here that we would need that bigger space for? I don't have a question.
How many, what was the question?
Large planes that we need that bigger space would come through during the year.
Right now, there is none, because they changed the criteria post 9/11. We don't know actually how many there are, because right now we're limited to 19 seats, 19 passengers or less.
Do you have a picture of what it could be?
You know, I actually don't.
20 year, no?
I think that'd be really generous. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking just a few planes.
That's very possible. I honestly don't know. I can't protract that out and see, you know, where we're at, but yeah.
I didn't have any sense at all of what we see.
It's a little bit of build it and they shall come. And certainly if you don't have the facility, if you don't have the space to accommodate, they're not coming here. But certainly I think that we have the support of the local port here in having larger planes, larger number of passengers coming in to clear customs at this location, and I think they would welcome that.
It was almost my sense that there's some discretion from the local port director, and it's not an arbitrary number, but it is a number that is flexible, and he's willing to expand that number to allow for more ride opportunities.
But he never gave you a number, you know, 30, 50, 100?
He was talking in the 50 to 75.
50 to 75?
Yes.
But my concern is once we've lost that traffic, it's going to take some marketing or something to get them back here. We just can't build it and say, hope they come, because we've lost that traffic. They're going to Detroit, they're going to Minneapolis, they're going to Chicago, because they all are international airports now.
Right. But I think our airport manager has been terrific in being able to secure these flights from various points in the world, and I think we'll continue to work on that and be successful.
Very kind, but I assure you it's a team effort. It's because of the airports, not because of me.
Well, you're the one that's going to the conferences where these folks that do the scheduling, and so count on you to be able to sell. You're our ambassador, and always have been. So thank you. Further.
Yeah, I guess maybe we just want to kind of continue through the CIP just to make sure that, like I said, I've accurately reflected your wishes for the next few years here. On the backside, we have included the ARF vehicle, understanding that that's 96 Thor.
Yeah.
So we're planning for replacement of that. We continue to bump the runways resurfacing project back. Every year we button up the bad areas, and if we can continue to do that, we'll do that, particularly try to get through this whole terminal project. And then 2020, we just have some of the projects that were discussed, kind of more long-term projects as far as the GA lighting and the 422 Merles, we bumped those back. Additional snow roll equipment in 2021, and then we still have the maintenance hangar that I guess has been on there for many years, but we put that back. So I guess my question is, since I still have the opportunity to make changes, is there anything here that we've missed, or anything that you would like to see me add on your behalf for the CIP?
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I guess the one that we've had in there year in and year out is purchase of land. If someone comes forth with that's in the eligible zones for purchase, we've always had a number in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some years we've used it, some years we haven't.
I can add that back in if you prefer.
Well,
I think as a marker, it would be helpful just to have that.
Okay.
yeah, that was one of my first points, thank you.
Thank you.
Was putting land acquisition in there. And also in regards to the skid steer, and Benita, I was tracking, you're doing a great job in your presentation. I was tracking what you were saying about whether it's on or off the list. It was my understanding that we had pushed that to 2015 to 215.
The skid steer, well, that's state fiscal year 2016, which is actually calendar year 2015.
Right.
So you would receive that next year in 2015 after July 1st.
There you go.
Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay. This thing is so confusing because
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that.
it is, because you're really looking at 3 different years here.
Yes.
The 2016 stands for state fiscal year 2016, which starts July 1st of 2015. In parentheses, for any of our federal projects, it's actually the federal year is the year before. So every project that has federal funding, you'll see the FFY 2015. That's to distinguish that's actually federal fiscal year 2015 under state fiscal year 2016.
Well, that's what I thought.
And calendar year 2015
Of course.
So,
well, of course.
it's a confusing, and it's something that we brought up to MnDOT, the way that they set up this new program. It's confusing, but to answer your question, Thor, in 2015 calendar year is when you would get it. So that's how I place that, and that would be a state project. And I believe, maybe Sean, you can help me out, it's under the new funding scenario for next year, is it 75% equipment for state, 75-25 as opposed to 2/3, 1/3?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so it's a better proration than you would normally expect. So that's what we do have that next year, Thor, for you.
Thank you.
That's up about 8%. We were what, 2/3?
2/3, 1/3 before,
Yeah.
so you do get a little bit better
It's
funding there
always a
with that.
moving target year to year.
Yep.
Depends on
Oh, that's a good opportunity.
Thank you.
Please, Commissioner Pavlik.
You know, Sean's really the multitasker. He flies you up here, he's the engineer, does he clean
And
bathrooms?
the go-to guy when you have
Yeah.
questions that nobody else can answer. You know?
He's also the runway control guy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does it all.
My question is this, you've had an opportunity, how comfortable are you, I mean, with these numbers? Because that's what we're concerned about, that's what Brian was getting to. You know,
Yep.
we got a lot of things on our plate, and looking forward, if we're gonna move forward with this, we need to know you're comfortable with these numbers, or that they're somewhat realistic. I know you can't make an exact prediction, but we've been talking about the higher prices we've been seeing for
Right.
projects throughout the
Right.
regions.
And I think that's still a concern, and Dustin and Bob, feel free to chime in here. I did hear in some recent conversations that the work is slowing down in North Dakota, which would benefit us next year as far as the contractors. The 7.4, you've already heard Dustin express some concerns about that. We do have opportunity to increase that cost to accommodate higher bids by tapping into the state dollars that we have available. That first phase, I'm trying to minimize that because there are a lot of pieces of the second phase that are not federally eligible, so I'm trying to save the state dollars for the second phase. But if we come to the point where we realize that phase 1 is simply that 7.4 is not realistic, that number can go up. The 4 million will stay the same, but you'll see additional funding requests from the state. You'll notice in that number I have $700,000 for state funding there. They've basically committed to 1.5 with the opportunity for additional 500,000. So we might be able to get that number all the way up to 2 million for that first phase. The reason I kept it at 700 is basically I'd like to try to utilize that in the second phase where we're not going to have as much federal eligibility. And I guess to expand on that, we really hope to get a better idea of the cost once we get the construction manager on board, once we develop some possibilities for these 2 phases moving forward, and to have that discussion at your December meeting.
Thank you.
Let's try to play out a scenario here, and I guess I'm not locked into doing a bid project in April of 2015. I think if we had to go one more year, all of our monies are secure. I've had conversations with Cassandra Isaacson about the 1.5 million that the MnDOT is holding, and she said not a problem to have that for the next couple of years. If you're not going to use it in 2015, let me know. I will use that money somewhere else in the state, but your 1.5 million is secure. Having said that, also our bid monies are secure for 4 years, or our bonding money.
Yep.
So that 2.2 million is secure.
Correct.
The only area that we have I think a possible loss factor is with our FAA monies. We would have to do some type of a project in calendar year 2015 in order not to lose additional entitlement dollars.
You would have $1 million at risk.
Yes, and so we would have to, I don't know if it's possible to look down and to do that concrete pad ahead of time, if we know where we're gonna go, if we could, I don't know if we can buy a passenger loading bridge ahead of time, those kind of things, but, you know, possibly we may have to move things, but I'm not completely sold that we'll get a project done or get it started in 2015 calendar year.
What do we have in the hopper for projection for runway rehab?
Right now, we have that all the way out to 2019.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Yep.
what do we have for a figure on that?
It's gonna be an expensive one. We're probably in the neighborhood of 5 million.
Okay.
I'd be interested in the passenger loading with the Bob's idea.
$500,000 local.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that to me is a
that's what
key
kind of-
part of getting
Yeah.
people out of the weather, not that slippery pavement.
Would there be an opportunity to purchase that in advance of the terminal?
I think it's risky.
That's risky because we don't know exactly what we want or need.
I think the concern there would be that the FAA would say you don't have any serviceable use for it right now, because I don't think we can retrofit it to your existing terminal building.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, my running.
I get that.
The other thing that you can always consider is the swap of entitlement dollars, and there's a risk to that too, but you can, if you don't use your entitlement dollars, you can transfer those to another primary airport and then write what they call a gentleman's agreement for those funds to be returned in a future year. We see that a lot with the GA side of things. We don't see it quite as much with primary airports, but it's something that certainly we could look into if we got to the point where, you know, we didn't really have any project that fit that $1 million, and we wanted to make sure that the commission didn't lose it.
MAC has always got projects, we might be able to trade with them,
Yep.
so that's a possibility too.
You know, equipment is always a good one there. I mean, maybe one of the things you could look into is the ARF vehicle, that's another thing. That's an easy project to slide in there, if we got to that point, would fit within your million. And we just went through the 139 inspection, I think everybody, there understands that it's something that needs an update. So, that's another option, I guess, it's something you could move up.
Because that unit will be 20 years old in another year.
That is correct.
Yep.
Commissioner Padlet?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, did you all hear the same thing I did? I couldn't be here for most of the meeting, but when we had Andy here, did he or did he not say that in his career, he had yet to see a project not funded once we had made the initial construction? All right.
Yep.
So, getting back to the chair's point, I mean, yeah, there is some risk here, but I mean, that one seems like probably worth taking based on history. I get, you know, I know, Brian and I, of course, we've got a commitment from the county board, but at least on paper, it looks like we can probably stay pretty close here. But if we can't, I mean, we've got a whole different issue, because Thor brought up the runway project coming up in 19, which will be on the heels of this. I think the other comment by the chair, I mean, that's right, it's a bit of on the customs, but even the entire project, it's a bit of a, you know, build it and hopefully we keep them at the very least, or they will come. The other side of that is we don't do this, we know a lot of it's going to go. So,
that's right.
And it's so critical to the economy here right now. So I think where we're coming from, we're certainly supportive, but we have to work with our commissioners, just like the mayor has worked with the council, trying to keep this in budgets. So I mean, I appreciate what you've done here. I mean, it's another look at, another way to do it. So.
Well, we're making use of funds that we have.
Right.
So we know these are funds that are there, and that's gonna build that first piece.
And the jetway here, if I could just, the other thing, Mr. Chair, the jetway is critical. That's one of the huge reasons we're doing that. And when we went to Brainerd, I could certainly see, Paul was there too, you know, and I wish everyone could have been there. And how they explain what an asset that is. I mean, to have a modern airport, you have to be built to accept that jetway. It's just the way it is.
Well, one thing I'd like to point out, maybe the word remodel has a different connotation for everybody, but Brainerd was a remodel. So think of that when you think of remodel.
The only place we could tell that was in the floors.
Yeah.
Because I asked you, did it heave? And I said, oh no, we had to remodel it.
Mr. Chair, please.
Just one issue that concerned me, and I think we need to look again at this. We went to state bonding and asking, I think it was for $4 million, with a shovel-ready project, essentially shovel-ready. The bids came in very high, and we did not get a $4 million. We got 2.2 or 2.1.
We asked for 3.
Yes, yes.
We got 3?
Yep.
Now, is there an opportunity to go back to this session or next session and see if we can get that other $1 million? I mean, this is an off bonding year, but they'll still probably have a small bonding bill. I realize that the control of the house side has changed, but I just think it might be worth to try to go back and get that other $1 million.
Argue that we were shortchanged.
Well, I mean, if you go into a project and you're asking for so much and they only give you a little bit, they practically killed your project on you. And then they expect you to go up the rest of the money. Well, this county and city can act up that other $1 million.
Especially given the fact that the estimates, all the construction costs have gone up by,
Well, I think we kind of knew that was going to happen.
to the degree that they have.
Yeah.
We're seeing that even, we have our bridge inspection from SCH that's up here today, and he said even the bridge work that he's been doing is 20 to 30% more than what they're anticipating. It's just kind of across the board. And one of the interesting side note to the bonding is Hibbing asked for $5 million for their bonding, got $5 million, and what we heard at MnDOT is they don't even need the $5 million. So there's that.
What's
There's
wrong
that.
with this picture?
Interesting.
Good point,
Yeah.
Pursuing.
If I could just interject, I think there's a real question about, you know, do we try and move next year, do we wait and hope that we get more money? I think the advantage to moving sooner rather than later are a couple. One is, obviously, this inflation isn't going to stop right now. It's going to continue. So every year you wait, you're losing 5 to 10% probably of your construction budget on a $9 million job, that's $900,000 that you've just lost by waiting a year. So that, I think that's one big thing. The other big thing that moving, you know, on this schedule allows us to do is to get in the ground when we want to get in the ground, which is, you know, in the summertime. So if we're on this discretionary cycle, now we're waiting until, you know, October, and we're in exactly the same place we were last time around. Contractors don't want to start building a project like this in the middle of winter. So I think those are two reasons to seriously consider the schedule that's being proposed here that would allow us to get going sort of on our terms.
Very good, thank you.
And Andy did say, we apply this historically, with the ADO, the grants have been issued in August, September. He did say that they are, and we, through McCullough, we've been talking to them too about we'd like to get the grants earlier. Some grants have been issued earlier, but in this case, we're applying to use federal entitlement funds rather than discretionary. So he gave us the nod that we should be getting the grant in June this year, provided the checkbooks are loaded. I'm sure you've all heard that term before. Provided the checkbooks are loaded by April. There is a 60-day waiting period once the checkbooks are loaded. I'm not sure what happens in that 60 days, but there is a 60-day waiting period. So, back to Destin's point, we're hoping to get started in June, which by then we should have a shell and have it all heated by the time winter comes and the inside work can occur. And then if we do get phase 2 with discretionary, we could actually wait until spring to start that, because they would have enough work to be doing on phase 1
In the winter.
in the winter.
I think, Bob, what happens in that 60 days, they print the money.
Probably.
I've used that term with my wife. The checkbook is loaded.
How often do you use it?
Payday.
Well, now, we have another conference call with FAA on December 22nd.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're having more, we're talking to them
Continually.
continually about our process, what we're doing. They know about the construction manager, they know about our schedule, the plan. And Andy said, it sounded like a solid plan, I think we're gonna
And just one more question.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mayor brings up a good point, you know, on the political side of things, obviously we're gonna have a Republican Congress. Do you see that changing the scenario? Because they've all campaigned on raiding Inspector.
No, I don't, especially not with entitlement funds.
And keep in mind, we are in the final year of a reauthorization that was passed.
That's already passed.
Yep, so the funding this year should be in place, so
Right.
there
So,
shouldn't be any
but
issues this year.
16 and out.
Then there's
That-
probably
that
a
could be
little
some
bit.
more issues.
Yeah, that's.
Then we
the
might
answer.
get into
The
those
House has been,
continuing
the House has been
resolutions.
held by the Republicans, even going into this. Schuster's gonna remain, it's already been announced that Congressman Schuster is gonna remain as the chair of the Transportation Committee, so there's not gonna be any change there. They've had what I think is probably a very successful bipartisan committee in taking care of transportation issues. So I think the risk is pretty small that there'll be much change there.
On the positive side, we had, most of my colleagues I know, probably you did too, saw the piece on transportation that was on the national news here last week. And the deterioration, we were talking about one of the bridges where they actually had to build a bridge underneath it to catch the falling debris off the deteriorating bridge, if you can believe that. So transportation certainly gonna be an
We're
issue.
fortunate in the air side of transportation is that those monies that are being collected on ticket taxes and gas taxes are going into a fund for just air service projects. So the AIP fund is solid.
Stable.
It just seems to me too, Mr. Chair, having this discussion, which is good, and I appreciate the way we're approaching this, is that a lot of this does hinge on this construction manager being really, really effective in helping us get there. So I'm glad we're having this discussion, that we're on the agenda for the day.
Yes, and I don't know if we want to segue into that, or do you have something else under engineering that we
I just
want-
have a couple things.
Okay, let's go to those
And then
first.
when you do get to the construction manager piece, because SCH Design Build is in there and they are a separate company from SEH, we still would like to be excused from the
Sure.
meeting at that point.
Understand.
Makes it easier for you.
We did have one meeting with the bonding folks, so that's a separate
Yes.
set of criteria and requirements. We've talked about it in the past, the B3 requirements for design and reporting. So there's more to be done on the bonding side. We did talk about that the bonds are gonna expire 12/31/2018. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. And one piece that we can work on almost immediately is for the bonding, they need to review all of your lease agreements. So I know the SkyWest lease agreement is under discussion today, but we can get all the lease agreements to them to start reviewing. I'm not sure what they do with them, but they do want to review it. They have to review and approve every lease agreement.
Every agreement. Janitorial services.
Anything related to the project,
Project,
anything
so-
related to the
Yeah, no,
terminal.
we
I think it's
know
for
but-
space
but
lease.
certainly the lease
Yes.
with the National Weather Service and
Car rentals.
SkyWest.
SkyWest.
Yep.
No problem there.
Is there a lease
Custom,
agreement with
TSA.
Customs?
No,
There's
there's,
not.
no, we provide a space for customs, but that's all.
Is there
Is
one
there
with
a-
TSA?
Yes, yes, we paid by TSA.
And for security?
We're not paid for security, we're just, they pay us for a rental of the office.
But our own, we are paying for our own security right now.
Correct. Yes.
And do we have an agreement with them that would have to be submitted to?
For review, yes.
Review?
With TSA, yes.
But not for our local security?
Do they have a space? in
Yes,
there?
they have
The
the
local
office
security.
upstairs.
Okay.
TSA
And then-
does,
Yes, and they pay us.
not secure.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking
But-
it's like $900 a month.
Bob Byman doesn't have a space.
No.
Okay,
Anybody
so
who's
nothing there.
utilizing
pickup.
space in the
That uses
terminal
space.
Yep.
would need to be
Yep.
reviewed. And is there a plan to have Customs to have a lease agreement and pay anything, or is that a,
I don't think you can.
you can't?
I don't believe so. I hope I'm wrong.
We certainly want to check into that. eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've never leased space before.
Not in
I've never
discussions in the
heard-
past, I believe, I don't think you can.
I would think though, even if there's no money exchanging hands, having a lease with all of your obligations, and everything spelled out is probably a good idea to go forward with.
Good point.
And
And I
keep in
think-
mind that that would be a phase 2 piece, so
Yes.
bonding doesn't, we're gonna use all bonding in phase 1. The reason I ask is because that would be a way to recoup some of the costs that are not fundable. I'm not aware if it's can or cannot do it.
Is that a good you too, or do you have a lease agreement with the terminal?
No.
Yeah.
With the commission.
For land, they have a piece of land that
Right.
they lease. Further,
That's it.
okay.
Sean has just comment about the pay-ups.
Sure, we've gotten signatures from KGM, so after the meeting, we'll just have the pay-ups required to be signed, but they've all been approved at the previous meeting, so.
That
So
pays
it's
off the pavement rehab, that was what, 165 or something, I can't remember the exact dollars.
Yep, there were three projects, the 2013 project, the 2014 project, and then the parking lot repair.
And maybe before we move into the construction manager, it was my sense in the conference call with the Federal Aviation Administration with Andy and Tracy. Andy was doing most of the talking, I don't think Tracy did much at all. And I think she's taking over. I'm not sure what the transition is there. It's already happened with the end of the year, but Andy seems to still be having his fingers in the pie.
And our hope is actually he continues.
Yes, yeah. But it was my sense that he was
Continues what?
somewhat dismayed that we chose to go with just a construction manager and not a construction manager at risk. Was that your sense?
I think he knows the construction manager at risk, he doesn't know the other way.
Since he thought there was more value in that there might be more to be gained by going that phase of the construction manager at risk and having them take over the whole project. That was just my sense.
I think his recent experience and
He
maybe.
certainly asked the question.
Yeah, I think maybe his only experience is Hibbing, because they did go that
CM
route.
risk.
Yep, Duluth, I believe, went the construction manager as agent route.
Yes.
And, you know, the reality is there are not that many projects that utilize federal funding in our region that require a construction manager. They have to get into these large vertical projects like what we're dealing with. So I think probably his most recent experience would have been dealing with the CM at risk at Hibbing.
Did Brainerd have a construction manager or construction manager at risk?
No, we had a
So
construction manager.
you were involved in that project?
We were involved, yeah, but we had a construction manager on site, but it was basically, who helped us through the design, but basically, you know, watching the project. And the St. Cloud terminal was the construction manager as agent.
Okay, just that information for the commission.
I think in that case of Brainerd, the construction manager actually worked for SCH,
No,
correct?
it was a
He working
separate,
for-
well, yes, it's a
Right.
sub-consultant to us.
In this case, where we're moving forward, this manager will work for this board.
Yes.
Correct.
Not for SCH.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, before we, anything else with regard to engineering or anything that you want to say with regard to the construction manager selection process?
You guys got good reviews at Brainerd from our colleagues, Rachel Nystrom. I don't know if you've ever met her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's tough. I like her. But they were pleased with the project.
And I guess as we look at, we've got four construction manager, or four companies that have provided construction manager services bids for us, and if the commission was to take and decide, not on one of these, but decided they wanted to go with construction manager at risk, how far back would that put the project? Would it put it back another month or 2 months?
Maybe Dustin can talk about that. I think they're usually involved a little sooner in the process.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, a construction manager at risk, you know, probably, our design process on this was very compressed because of, you know, the federal funding schedule. But normally with the CM at risk, you'd like to get them involved, you know, as early as you really can. You know, I think we maybe would lose some of the benefit of having them on board really early in the project. But so bringing them on, I think the delay, if that's what you're asking about, is just the delay in that you'd have to go out for another request for
Round of bidding, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, there's probably 2 months that you would lose there. But I mean, aside from that, I don't think the process would necessarily be different going forward. As I said, yeah, I think you lose some of the benefit with the CM at risk because they're not on board earlier, but you know, if they're coming on whenever they would come on, then you know, they become part of the team, and you know, beyond that, I don't think it would change the process in terms of the schedule. It would just be a different relationship between ourselves and them and the board.
And you could, you know, I think it could go quicker. You'd have to reject these, re-advertise, and then maybe have a special meeting. So, you know, as soon as you could get all that done, then we could have the construction manager at risk on board. And it essentially works the same way. They help you through the design process, and then at some point, they give you that not to exceed dollar amount. So you really are executing two separate agreements with them. One agreement would be for this upfront design piece and help with getting the numbers down and calling in subs and everything. And the second piece then is they actually then work as your general at the end. So then you have the execute the second piece for the construction, say if it's a $10 million facility.
And typically along with that, so they're not just saying $10 million, it'll be, here's the exhibit of the plans that we base this off of, and the plans are, at 50% completion, and then there would be sort of a list of understanding that goes along with that. We've reviewed these drawings, this is what we understand this $10 million number includes. And then, so as you go forward, just trying to converge those two things.
Well, maybe for, certainly for myself, I don't know if the other members of the commission, but maybe you could outline exactly what the construction manager at this point coming into the process would be able to do. Certainly review and work with you with regard to the redesign. And what else in that phase, that beginning phase? Is there other?
I think honestly, from my point of view, because this project always is going to have components of phasing in it, and staging and all of that. That's where some of our expertise in the architectural side sometimes falls short. We don't necessarily understand. We can design the building, and it's sort of a completed project. So what the general contractors or a construction manager would be good at is understanding how you get from nothing to that completed project. And so we may have some assumptions about how that phasing would work, and they would say, you could do it that way, but this way would really be a lot easier. And so, if you make some minor changes or adjust your assumptions about how phasing and staging and things like that happen, I think that's where a lot of the benefit that would come from that we can't necessarily bring to it. The other piece is that we would hope that they've got some good contacts with people in the region that we don't have, contractors and things like that. In fact, that we're not allowed to speak with as we're designing it. We can't be reaching out to them, but they may have those contacts and have those conversations and understand that. For example, there were a lot of precast panels in the project, and they may say, that just doesn't make sense because there's nobody up here that can do those precast panels. So what if we did it this way? You could save money, save time. Those are the kind of understandings that we would hope they would bring to the project.
Would they bring those kind of things back to the table, or they would just make them?
Well, I think assuming it's a CM as agent process, so what you have in front of you today, we would be working with them, and that would be a conversation that we would have, and then we would come to you with a recommendation based on that conversation and say, here's what we would propose. Now, with a CM at risk, it may be more that we have so we go from the 50% design to 100% design, okay? And they might look at that and say, that written list of assumptions that we gave you at 50%, we feel that that's not aligned with where the design went. And so we need to reconcile that, and then we might come to you and say, do you want to put more money in to get the design, or do you want to take the project out to get to the budget? So that's this kind of convergence that happens in a guaranteed maximum price kind of arrangement. The contractor's promising to give you this building for this dollar amount, and they tell you what they think that is, but sometimes there's a discrepancy between what your expectations are and what their expectations were.
And then do I understand that the construction manager would continue to work through the construction process as our representative on the project?
So in the CM as risk, they are
Even in this phase here?
Yes.
I'm sorry. With the CM as agent, yeah.
End of the
CM
project.
as agent.
Yeah. So with CM as agent, they have a contract that's only to you. They have no contractual relationship to any of the people that are building the project. So they are solely your representative, and because in this scenario it's difficult for us to be on site all the time reviewing things, they presumably would be providing that service to you. They would be on site 5 days a week, making sure that the documents that were bid on is the project that you're getting at the end of the day.
But in both cases, they would be on board from the time you select them to the end of the project. It's just that the construction manager as agent helps in the design process, so does the construction manager at risk. But when it comes to the bidding and construction, the construction manager at risk becomes the prime contractor, where the construction manager as agent is your representative overseeing the prime and all the subs.
Is there a difference in cost? I can't remember.
I don't think there's really a difference in cost other than you're guaranteed that maximum price for your project. But with that, you may or may not get everything you're designing.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that, the CN is risk, because they're serving as general contract, there's a lot of ways for them to make money on a project. Whereas the CN is agent, it's only the fee that you pay them. And that's, but as a at risk, as part of the GC, they have markups and they have fees, and there's lots of different ways that they're making money on building the project, so.
Certainly could, Mr. Chair, getting back to your question, Gail, it sounds to me like that risk is really less control here. And they're looking out for themselves, right? And as Commissioner McBride just said, so I think that was the reason we looked at that. But having said that, I mean, there's something to be said for the other side where you've got the guaranteed price too, so.
I just think, Mr. Chair, I think, just simplistic in my mind, a construction manager at risk, we got a $7 million project, we say, here's the project for $7 million, build it. And he's gonna come in at $7 million, and you may get shortcuts, and
That's right.
they're essentially at risk for $7 million once they accept it.
Right.
So, but you get what they build.
Yep. Yeah, they might have plywood on the outside, and that might be it.
Yep.
Further, I guess, in terms of process, further questions with regard to construction manager, in terms of process, and I don't, there may be other items on the agenda that you want to be here for. Should we hold this to our last item, or do you want to?
You guys can go through this now, we'll stick around for the whole meeting.
Yeah, you can just
So
come-
it'd be nice for us to know who was selected, so we
Sure,
can
yeah.
contact them right away, so if you wanna do it now, that's fine.
Okay. I guess we're ready to move to new business, and that's one of the items, unless we want to talk about some of these others that are on the agenda here, the Tech property, the SkyWest lease renewal. Please.
Mr. Chair, I prefer to go through what you just said, and then we'll do the construction manager after we get done with the other new business.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
All right, that's fine. Let's talk about the Peck property, and my understanding is that Mr. Peck has passed away, and that Mrs. Charlene is interested in selling her property, and you have as part of the packet here that Kyra's put together where that property exists, and we don't cover all of their property, and I guess, as I understand it, is that darkened square? Is that right about the center of the picture here?
Northeast corner of Frankie.
Yep, okay. And they are in the A zone, as I understand it, Thor.
That would be correct, I believe, Ms. Lee.
Yeah, they're way down here, right?
Here.
Yes. They're off the end of,
Used to be an old garage there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bruce Buttress used to own that?
I think
Yeah.
decades ago, or his
Yeah.
father did maybe.
Yeah, because I remember there was an old garage where he used to work on his trucks.
How much land is it? Acres wise? I wasn't
The,
able to find the acreage when I looked at it.
what did it say on the tax statement? Parcel description. It's 550 foot.
Like 500.
No, that's just, well, east 550 foot of the north 500. It doesn't tell us enough there.
208 by 208 is an acre.
Kyra, did she mention any acreage?
She did not know.
It would look to be a couple of acres.
I think it's,
You say it's at least 2 acres.
I think it's 5.
But that would be eligible for 90% funding because it's in the A zone.
That would be the RPZ.
It'd have to be in the
RPZ. A zone is
Midnight.
state, and RPZ is federal. 90%, if it's in the RPZ, the runaway protection zone, then you can get the 90%. The A zone's longer than the RPZ, so if it's outside the RPZ and in the A zone, you might be able to get some funding from MnDOT. less likely to get the 90/10 from the FAA.
So we would have to
It
run
is-
this up
Because
the,
it's south, yeah.
yeah,
There's,
down where the highway has
If it was
turned.
inside,
The RPZ.
well, inside the RPZ for sure, but inside, roads, right now you're crossing roads to get to it. There's not a road.
No, it's inside the highway.
It's outside of.
But he's saying 332 is a road, correct?
Right, right.
Oh, crossing
So once you
332.
Right,
cross
so
that.
we're outside of that box.
Yeah, then the FAA's, I think it'd be less likely to fund it, particularly because it's outside the RPZ, but MinDOT should be able to participate.
Now, this question doesn't pertain to this project, but remind me, on the RPZ, that didn't get changed to 100%?
Funding ratio?
Yeah.
No, everything's always 90/10.
Still 90 on the
Yeah.
RPZ.
Yeah.
Because there was some discussion, and they said, you gotta have a projection zone, right? On-
Yeah, they want you to own and fee all of your RPZ, but it's still at that 90/10.
90.
Yeah.
How far off the end of the runway does the runway protection zone go?
2,500, it's 2,500 feet,
Right.
plus it's 200, so 2,700 feet.
So we need to have another overlay on this zone here,
So we can see where it is.
see where that
You know,
RPZ
do the
is.
RPZ on there. Yeah.
But being that it's still in the A zone, FAA will participate, or,
FAA won't participate.
A zone is only MinDOT,
Mhm.
it's nothing to do with the FAA. However, it is in the approach.
Yeah, which is
So-
interesting, because they regulate the airspace. in the
Right.
Yeah,
So-
So they may participate.
We
don't
would,
know.
we would approach them to participate,
Yeah.
for sure.
and we have never bought an air navigation easement on this property, to my knowledge.
Not on that property.
Can get your rear application.
Did we buy one on Frankie?
Yeah, I
Bar?
believe we did
I thought
years
we
ago.
bought an air
Yeah.
navigation easement.
So how does that work, Mr. Chair?
Well, it lessens what they will participate in as far as payment.
You'll never
If you've already got an air navigation easement, because what you'd be buying is a air space protection as well as ground protection for the airport.
There are different easements, some are very restricted, just as restricted as fee, so easement to the ground, or some are just easements to the right to fly over the property.
So if we were to, if the commission was to desire to purchase this, we would need to start a process with both the FAA and the MinDOT to see what their participation level would be.
Eligibility.
And are you in a position to do that for us?
Sure.
Okay, under our contracts for,
Yeah, we would just do it, I mean, it's not a lot of legwork for us to contact.
Commissioner McBride.
But what we have here is what the county assessed value for land buildings. We have not, and she has not approached us with any dollar figure.
No, and, you know, we would, the process, I think, includes that they can have she can have an appraiser, and the airport can have an appraiser, so you'd end up probably getting two appraisals in addition to what you see here.
Yep.
Yep, that's exactly right.
The
We
appraisal
can move
and the
forward
review
without the appraisal to see what
Yes.
funding is.
Yeah, we can,
Without dollar
as long as we
figure.
know where it's located, we can talk to FAA and MinDOT to see if any piece would be eligible. That'd be the first step regardless.
Sure.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
I would move to have SEH move forward with the FAA and
Review
MinDOT to
of
review.
potential funding for that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then we can notify the fact that we're starting the process, but we don't know at this point that it's going to be. Right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McBride and second by Commissioner Pavlik to have Short Elliott and Hendrickson begin the process of review with the Federal Aviation Administration and the Minnesota Department of Transportation Aeronautics with regard to funding participation on the purchase of the Leroy and Charlene Peck property. Please.
And we should explain the purpose to the public, and
Yes.
I can guarantee you the call that we're gonna get is gonna be from Frankie, because he's gonna be nervous. He'll wonder if we're looking at his property. Am I wrong, Thor?
No, you're not.
He pays attention to this stuff.
Oh,
And I don't know if Mrs. Peck has approached Frankie to see if he would be interested in purchasing the property, but,
If I may.
please.
And little, just a brief history here, back decades ago, credit to the original, developers of the airport, they had great foresight into these zones and what have you, and it's controversial then, guaranteed. Boy, retrospectively, what an incredible piece of work it was back in the day to be sure that those lands were in essence protected. So from my perspective, any of these areas, on the approach end of any of the runways, boy, if the opportunity's there to purchase the land.
We wanna look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it protects the investment.
Absolutely for the future, because it'll only be, in my opinion, more restrictive to the zones will become even more and more restrictive, more and more regulated,
Certainly
so.
a possibility.
I
I
just-
guess question for Thor, if it's within the A zone and within our airport zoning, do we have first right to purchase?
I don't think so, no.
So she could sell to a private individual?
Yep. She could turn around and sell it if we're not interested in buying.
Well, actually, getting back to Thor's point, it was so controversial when we had to have property.
The zoning, yeah.
We've taken a position over the years, willing seller, willing buyer, we want to be in there and take a look at the
Yeah.
opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure the public understands what we're
Yeah.
Is, Mr. Chair, is that why, as you go toward the, further up the A zone, there is more and more parcels city and county owned? Is that
Absolutely.
in the process of
That's exactly
acquiring?
what happened.
And then typically, once the property's acquired, the structures are taken off?
Yep.
Those A zones have expanded since the days of Republic Airways.
Absolutely.
And they will probably continue.
Would you happen to have a spare copy of what you're looking at that I could?
I do believe it.
Okay.
I've got
You wanna,
a
do you want,
copy for this one.
do you wanna keep yours? I
No,
can-
you.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Then
Do you guys, do you
Yeah, that'd be
know,
helpful.
how long they've lived there and it's just been a residence? Just off your head? Because I would think, some things we want to consider is you're going to tear the structure down, is there any environmental issues that you don't want to be stuck with cleaning up? Or at least know about that?
I know it's 40 plus.
40+ years.
Yeah.
And it's just been a residence?
I mean, Mr. Peck was married to our neighbor's sister, and they were there when my wife and I got married, and that's 40 plus years ago.
That becomes a disclosure issue at the time of the transaction, so that it does get looked at.
So it isn't just the cost of buying the property and buildings. I think there's appraisal costs. There could be moving costs that she may be eligible for.
Legal
There's-
fees.
And what was that?
Legal fees usually
Legal
come into
closing
play.
fees and all of that, so.
Yep.
Demolition costs?
These are, land purchases are a complicated process.
Expensive.
Yes, and expensive.
She has not, she just has approached you to purchase it, has not requested a dollar amount for it?
No.
To Mr. Chair, she's had initial conversations with Kyra in our office. I think the other thing we need to communicate to her is that this is a process that it may take a little time, because she was just under the assumption that it happened fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So, communicate.
If I may too, she has questioned if, she's wanting a definite answer if the commission's gonna move forward or if she should list the property. She's stated that to me several times.
That's why we needed to act today.
Yes.
So she knows we're moving forward. Did she approach us?
Yes, she did.
Good.
Yep.
So, what opportunities to come.
So further discussion with regard to the motion to have SEH begin the review process with FAA and MnDOT. Not all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, and you have the ball in your court.
Okay.
We'll take care of it.
Let's see, SkyWest lease renewal. We have that 23-page document to process. They have sent to us.
I'll move before anyone changes their mind.
Yes.
We were very fortunate.
Especially
Oh, my
Skywest.
goodness, let me tell you, yeah, folks.
Yeah.
And
We're very, very
a wonderful airline to work with.
I guess just for Thor, for information for the public.
Sure.
Even though we have a SkyWest, people ask questions, why does it continue to be Delta on the side of the planes?
Yeah.
And they have some kind of agreement with Delta
Yep.
to supply planes?
Yep,
So
exactly.
Are these SkyWest employees flying these planes?
Yep, they are SkyWest employees. SkyWest is an entity in itself and has a contractual through line agreement with Delta.
Delta logo for advertisement, that's what it
Correct.
is.
Yep.
And this is a continuation, you know, we've had them now for 2 years, and this would be a continuation of their renting the space in the airport. Now, once we complete a building, new terminal building, we will need to sit down and renew this lease agreement with them. And that could happen in the next 2 years, is what I would see as a timeline.
And with the bonding, I think that the bonding may require a new lease as well.
Yes, I'm sure it would. So we have a motion by Commissioner Padlet to approve the operating agreement and building lease with SkyWest Airline. Second by Commissioner Devonen. Further discussion? Yes.
Susan had put a letter into the packets also in regards to the overnight fees that is being charged, or not being charged, should I say? And wondering if that's wanting to be added in. There's a little spreadsheet in there of what a couple of the others airports charge. Shows some information.
Mr. Chair, you're
More
more.
statements. Process.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
If I may.
Yep.
A statement again on a very positive discussion about SkyWest. They're one of the few airlines too that has already pre-ordered and prepaid
New jets.
New jets from Mitsubishi MRJ from Japan. They're beautiful aircraft, miniature 737. So it's a reflection of where they are financially and where they're planning to be. So we're very fortunate to have them.
Those the 70s?
Yeah. They're gonna make 70s and 100s. So, but, they're one of the very few regionals that has definitely placed a huge orders.
They have done an outstanding job, we're fortunate to have them.
Absolutely, the size of our community and one of the few airports in Minnesota that has airline service.
One thing with the jet service we have with those CRJs, I mean, they are so quiet, and they fly over town, you don't even know they're there. It's a great aircraft, and we're gonna be improved with Mitsubishi's.
Question for the airport manager. Do they have their own de-icing equipment?
They are a combination of, the airport commission has de-icing equipment, and then we operate it for them, and their people operate the de-icing truck.
Okay.
We drive it, they operate the boom, and with the second seater with the.
And are we supplying the?
Nope.
They supply all of the.
They're supplying all the.
That's the glycol.
Yeah, the type 1 de-ice and the type 4 anti-ice, correct.
Okay. So the only question here is on the bottom of that scale. But we haven't been charging them for overnight of that, parking that plane here. So, and nobody else, well, let's see, I shouldn't say, Brainerd is, but Hibbing is not. But they don't have an overnight at Hibbing. No.
We want them to.
Yes.
I'm just curious how that's established, $11.69 a night. What is it?
That
I
was
have
just
no idea, I'd be lying.
It was just negotiated
An
over the
arbitrary
years
number, yeah.
with the previous airline. But
Hold on.
SkyWest wouldn't pay it.
I had no
idea. That's-
If I could, Mr. Chair, in my
What
view,
that covers.
not charge them a small price to pay to have them here. I'd hate to change anything because I don't think they thought it was our intent.
The pilot get out there, put in the parking
Well, right, about a quarter
It's like
hour.
we will stay with the same
like a
rates.
squirrel under the icing truck.
For that amount of
Second.
revenue, it's
Yeah.
not worth any disruptions.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
Things rolling.
So we would maintain the same rates and further questions or discussion with regard to the lease agreement? All those in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Motion is carried. Lease agreement is approved. Thank you. Managers report.
Yes, starting off, I apologize to the commission, particularly I should have brought this up during the financial statement. We had a complete furnace failure of one of the furnaces in the ARF building. It's actually happened last month. I sequestered two quotes, one from Fletcher at $2,700, one from Shannon's Plumbing and Heating at $3,345. It was an emergency repair, so I elected to go forward with the repair / new furnace with Fletcher Heating and Air Conditioning at $2,700. And that bill was submitted on the 10/29.
So it's gonna cost you quite a bit of money if we don't approve.
Exactly, so I know exactly. I apologize, I literally looked to the left at this moment, so I would ask.
Got to be done.
Approval of that, but then we also should be getting reimbursement.
I would suggest that we had the same thing happen
Yes.
2 years ago.
I believe it was.
And we
Okay.
did work with MnDOT to get an emergency grant for that covered
Beautiful.
a piece of it. I know that, I don't think there's been any cost submitted for that grant from the first time, and it's still open. We might be able to amend that grant and get this on there too.
Beautiful.
I know that, how many units do we have? These are,
This one is actually a non-hanging unit. This is actually a floor-mounted forced air furnace that's in the office portion of the ARC
okay,
building.
okay, because the other one was in the,
In one of the hanging
bays.
units, exactly, hanging units, yeah. And this unit has been there since the original, 1978. So, yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. We got light out of it, so.
If I could get somehow a copy of the invoice,
and
then I can work with MnDOT to see if we can get that in the grant agreement
Kyra
amended.
and,
Yep, Kyra and I can work on that.
okay, all right.
Okay.
So we need a motion to approve the $2,700 purchase and then seek the reimbursement. That would all be one motion.
I'll move on that.
Motion by Commissioner Nevenin to approve, second by Commissioner Rogers. For discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. $2,700 is approved for payment, and we will then seek with SCH and Kyra's work reimbursement for a portion of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further?
Sure. In regards to, Brian was sharing with me a person possibly setting up a business in our community in 20 a month. Just reminding the group of COLA testing and the economic impact it has on the local economy. I don't know how large of a team we have there right now through NEV's COLA testing program, but that definitely is adding numbers to our airline, there's no question about it. It's a huge impact to the local economy, car rentals, motels, restaurants, what have you, grocery stores, I mean, the local auto parts stores, I mean, it's huge. This year, it seems that we've ramped it up a goodly amount.
And it's a really
Starting to gel.
26 people on the ground right now.
26 people. 26 people in and out all week long. We've put in some little extra safety measures. It's going very, very well. Paul and his team is doing great work, so that obviously helps with our passenger numbers, which is just wonderful. I assure you, I say this with pride, but I also say it with the fact of the matter is we're getting multi-use out of the airport. I guarantee you, there's no wasted space there going on. We're making it go. So, and credit to Paul and his team. He's very, very helpful, and we try to help them the best we can. Segueing over that, Camp Anabi is here, winter is here, and so we're just into winter ops and snow removal, and we're just getting through hopefully that nasty transition from fall into winter, which means icy conditions and slippery and bad numbers and what have you. And so we're hopefully we're through that phase, which is always nice to get into the colder weather. And yeah, so we're into that mode now, and we're hoping and praying with a winter like last year. If we do, that's the way it is. Please.
Is there a charter?
Yes, Thursday, Thanksgiving morning, Sun Country, 7:30 a.m. Correct.
You sense that it's full up, or is it?
I think I don't know.
Not quite?
No, I don't, I think they were advertising, I don't, because of the holiday, I don't think they have a full,
It's a tough time.
That's interesting.
So they're going out tomorrow and coming back on Sunday, as I believe.
That is correct. Sunday night, their arrival departure, we try to time that with the morning departure on Thanksgiving. So 7:30 arrival departure, basically 7:30 Sun Country to get them out in and out just after we launch the airline at 6. Actually, it's 7 o'clock special Thanksgiving time. And then on just a side note, on Thanksgiving, it needs to be a travel day. We have two international aircraft coming in and out that day.
Customs?
Yeah, one at 11:40 in the morning and one at 10:30 at night.
I think though, Mr. Chair, it's a reminder to the public that that kind of service is available. It's been very successful in terms of numbers. Absolutely helps our numbers overall, but the fact that we can pull that off here, and, yeah.
I would just add, I mean, that's reflected in our plans. They're up.
Oh, yes.
And it's not just cold weather testing, you both deserve credit there, you do a great job managing that airport. But we've talked to the major industry and employers in this
Yes.
community, and to them, this airport's, it's not critical, it's essential. They wouldn't be here without it, so.
Thank you. But again, I honestly say, it's all team. I guarantee you, it's just, it's all teamwork.
Bob?
You mentioned SkyWest with the new aircraft.
Yes.
Just for the design purposes, again, there were two things that I wanted to touch on. One was SkyWest aircraft. We
Yes.
designed it for 50 passenger. What are they operating now? Is it still 50?
They're running 50s, yes.
And are they planning to go to 70 here?
Yep.
They are.
Eventually, I believe, because they're going to start replacing a huge one of the fleet with the 70s. Yeah.
Okay, so we
That's
can
a
design.
75 passenger.
The
75
MRJ
that they're going to, and my understanding is that they'll have those all replaced within 3 years.
Yeah. They're the
So-
first in line.
All right, so we'll need to contact them to get something around that, because then the hold room can be double the size of the aircraft. So right now, we're designed for 100. And the other piece was the customs facility. We're looking still at 50 passengers. Okay.
Not the type of airline where the captain's smoking a cigar in shorts and reading the newspaper.
Bob,
The
you said the
cameras.
whole area has to be double the size on the
Yeah,
chassis
go.
of the plane? So we need to design the whole area for 140?
Well, it doesn't have to be, it can be.
It can
It can be, okay.
Yes.
That's the maximum that they'll fund is.
Are we talking about the area after you go through security, or the
Yes.
two together?
The secure hold room.
Why would we want it double what we?
You
go
can
with?
design, because you design for 2 aircraft at one time.
But
That's
that's not-
the maximum that's eligible.
Yeah, so you don't have to design it that big. We could say that 100 is the right size, but I know there was some concern, you know, when you have a 737 charter plane that's also using that same size, and that potentially is 130 or 150 passengers on that. But you can't design it that aircraft because it's not your scheduled service.
They put 120 to 140 people on here with that a number of times during the year. So yes, it isn't large enough.
I would just say, brand new aircraft, larger passenger capacity, it makes that jet weight all that more critical.
But we're paying for square footage in that holding area. And that larger plane maybe comes here 4 times a year.
The Sun Country machine? Yeah, at least 4.
5 or 6 times.
Yeah. Good look.
But our everyday passenger one will be 75. I mean, if we're looking to have everyone be able to sit down for that few times a year, it's not that way in any other airport that I've been in. I mean, the seating area is small. People are standing all over the place when you're at your boarding, when you're ready to board, when you've gone through security and you're at your gate.
At MSP.
And at Detroit, and at Boston, and at LaGuardia, which are the airports that I'm familiar with. There's never chairs for everybody in the holding area. I just want us to be frugal about that. I mean, to be over 100, to me, seems ridiculous. That we would bill for that. I mean, people are excited to go on that vacation. If they don't have a chair to sit on, I mean, that's not a big deal. People are standing all over in MSP waiting to get in their game. I would recommend that we be on the frugal side there. I mean, if we bill for 75.
Well, just one thing to consider is that we were at 50, now we're at 75. So the service may change, so you want to keep that in mind to have some flexibility. But we are double the aircraft that is regularly serving the airport is what's eligible.
But that doesn't
what you
mean we
want
have
us
to
to
do that. We're
design
paying
to
for
is
every
your-
foot of.
is your
Yes,
decision.
we're paying for every
What
foot.
does Brainerd have? They had a,
We did-
they had
we
an
did
area
double.
that could open up further.
Yeah, we did double in the hold room. I believe it's 100 and 125 total.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I remember.
So the hold room was based on that 50 passengers, so we went to 100, and then that 25 is the flight.
And I think you're also looking at the possibility of using some of that whole area for the,
We were.
Now,
if we're doing this in 2 phases, depending on what we do, that may or may not be an option if it's a separate building.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, and you know, certainly you're under no obligation to pursue that. It's an option for you to consider, and you need to decide what's the right size for you, based on, you know, exactly how often you think the charters are coming through and how critical it is for everybody else to see it. The other thing to think about, I think because of the way it lined up, there actually were 99 seats in the hold room. If you look at a typical hold room, though, you know, you don't ever use all those 99 seats. Even if there's 120 people, you know, people will have their bags, and you know, you wish they would pick up their bags and not, but you know, and people don't like to sit right next to somebody else. So you know, invariably, you know, you're not actually getting 99 people seated if you have 99 seats.
Well, and the other thing to think of is, we very seldom fill that airplane. From here, we share, how many a day do we share one a day, and we have one by ourselves.
Right now.
Right, yeah, in the summer, sometimes we may put on a full, but, in the winter, I know we don't fill up that plane. So we might have 20 people in that area waiting to get on the plane. On the one we share, with whoever we're gonna share with this winter, probably about half the passengers at least come from the stop. They book those seats, so they're gone. I just want us to be thoughtful and frugal about, we're paying per square foot for a space, that we don't overspend for space that really we don't need.
Mr. Chairman, and I think that's one of the purposes of a construction manager, and we all want to keep the costs as low as possible. But we've set a budget, and we can't exceed it, so I mean, we're protected there. I just want to echo what the chairman said. You know, when we were in Brainerd, that was I thought a great solution was having that opening where you could open, when it's not in use, you could open the whole thing up. And that would allow everyone to sit. And when they're both being used, of course, it wouldn't, Gail. But I guess it remains to be seen whether that's going to be workable under this scenario. It sounds like, you know, could be or not. So
Well, it still could be a piece of that, even if you design for, say, 140 plus, and a portion of that could be partitioned off so that it's open to the public for additional non-secure seating, and then it could become secure.
comes down to maximum utilization of the space. I think that's what you're.
And you can.
we're not enlarging the square footage of the facility here.
It might bring it up just slightly if we were going from 100 to 150.
Yeah,
Might bring it up
were
some.
you to give us that direction, we would have to increase the square footage of the whole room.
Yeah.
There's really not room for any more in there. It's kind of maximized right now in terms of the number of seats we can have.
But keep in mind that space is federally eligible, so
Yes.
that is for your 90-10 at that point.
But we're heating it, we're cleaning it, you know, I mean, it's not just
Yep.
the initial cost.
Yep.
It's long-term costs that we're.
But I think, you know, for us in the design process, we would need some
Direction.
concrete direction on that.
Okay?
Before we leave that, I mean, we're still at the 90-10, 10%
Yes.
local. And I know we've been making efforts to get that raised back to 95.
I was talking to Senator Franklin, who was here yesterday about that. Good.
So I mean, that's not out of the question at this point in light of all the things that have
Yes.
happened in the county here, and
Right.
even recently as Paul has noted. So we're going to continue to work on that.
Yep.
5%, I mean, even at
It's
this
a
point,
huge
it's still a lot of
spread,
money. So
yeah.
that would help us tremendously.
If I please may add one more thing in regards to cold testing, kind of ironic. Mitsubishi Industries in Japan, the same company that made the Japanese Zero. Back in the day, in the early 70s, here at National Falls, their first two corporate aircraft, the ME-2 and the Diamond 1, one was a turboprop, one was a jet aircraft, was cold weather certified here at National Falls. So no, that whole story just continues. It's fascinating.
Wow, amazing.
Hangars, are the hangars being used, the new hangars? Are
Yeah.
They both, or three, all three of them are?
For sure, Wagner's is active with theirs.
Yes, I know
Yep.
their plane is now stationed here.
Correct.
The other, I don't know if the other two have got planes in there.
You know, not much activity.
Pardon?
Bob Devlin was
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob had his in as soon as they dumped the gravel.
Yeah, he was, he's in there, they're still completing the process.
Okay, very good. Other items for the manager? Okay, we'll go to Secretary's report. Anything special? Karen?
I attended the AirTap workshop back on November 5th, and it was very good to go. I got to speak with a lot of, or meet face to face with a lot of the NDOT and FAA representatives, so it was nice to put a face to who I'm talking to and whatnot. Most of it was on runway extension and things like that, but there was a lot of good pieces that I pulled from there regarding PFCs and the CIP. It was good to just go and kind of learn. There was a lot to take in
Yeah.
and a lot of verbiage to try to distinguish, what was what, but it was good.
Wonderful.
Yes. And then I also, in your packets, I put together a little spreadsheet. And it's just to show you a little bit of something that I'm trying to work on in regards to the grants, the federal and state grants. Just putting together an example of, what grants are out there, how much has been spent, what each grant amount is total, and just kind of explains what's what on that. So that's one thing that I'm working on to try to better inform everyone of. Yeah, what's out there. And then as payments come in and whatnot, I'm updating on a regular basis. So I'm still trying to learn what's out there as well. So this is a work in progress for myself, but it just gives you an idea of what is out there.
Very good.
If I
That's
may,
very helpful, please.
From a management perspective, we very much appreciate your efforts. My wife and I both. Truly, thank you.
All right, further, Karen?
That's about it.
Okay, so we'll go to construction manager selection this time.
We'll fetch you when we're done.
I got the last. Carol must have.
If she did on time.
All right, we have 4 statements of qualifications from 4 different groups.
I left one,
Yep, both should be there.
I am familiar with 2, but I'm not familiar with the other 2. Imel is a general contractor from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I just asked Jenny Herman, whose brother is a contractor in Green Bay, if he was aware of this contractor and what kind of reputation he's related to. He's got a very good reputation in the Green Bay area, and he's a
So it's certainly a company that we do business with.
Sure.
Very good. I'm not sure how you say the,
Actually, the bottom right looks similar to one of the pictures we had on this side.
Altig and
Fargo?
Fargo, North Dakota.
SCH. Chris Anderson. I don't complain.
Oh, no, the same. They're using the same.
And then the SEH, design build. And They are out of St. Paul. And we heard from their individual at the last meeting. And then the fourth is Kraus Anderson, out of the Bemidji, northern office in Bemidji.
Done a lot of work up here.
Yes. And I think they showed one project that they, of course, they did a renovation at Chisholm Hibbing. They did the Duluth terminal. And I believe they showed the International Falls they had worked on the Voyageurs National Park somewhere. I read that in there.
Correct, yeah. And Super One Foods did, as well as Rain Lake Medical Center, 3 projects.
Yes, and they presently are doing the renovation at Rainy Lake Medical Center, the care center, converting that to a clinic. And so they have that project going in International Falls presently too. And they, I see they listed as references Tom Werner from Duluth, Gary Skolman, and Dave Stewart.
Mr. Chair, if I could just start the discussion.
Please.
First of all, I guess I'm pleased that we've got 4 real qualified companies here. And all obviously have experience in the aviation area, some more than others, and then obviously some in the region that we can either go to or we, I still have some concern with the relationship with SEH. And even though it's a separate entity, it's still under the same umbrella and the perception of that might bring. You know, Kraus Anderson, I think, again, this company is going to be key to controlling the costs and making sure we can make this project happen the way we want it to happen. The fact that Kraus Anderson has been on the ground here, I think is a real plus. They know obviously the local contractors. There was some reference that from the SH design people that the fact that local knowledge is another big key to this. I think that could be a real benefit. So I mean, just in my mind, as I sort through these, and they're all obviously qualified and bring a lot, that you know, I just gave a little bit more weight to a firm that has local knowledge and has done projects within the area, and just want to make those comments up front and start the conversation.
And let Commissioner McBride.
Just what we received here and kind of question is, all 4 of them submitted is a qualification statement. I mean, how do we select a manager without knowing cost? There may be cost difference. I've looked through it, I didn't see anything anywhere of a price of Kraus Anderson to SEH to ML or whoever.
And it's a good question too, and I don't know if it's based on the project size, and they don't know until they get into it. But yeah, right. How do you determine?
Is it a percentage of the total project?
I think that Steve mentioned that it was a percentage, wasn't it? Was it not?
Yes.
That's how they scaled it.
And SEH had a percentage in the original contract, and I believe the services that they were looking to provide both during the project and prior to the project being started and the construction, I'm thinking that it was somewhere in the $1 million range is where I remember that. And I don't have that. I don't have that.
I still remember that number.
Yeah.
With me.
I do too, about $1 million.
Yes, of the cost.
I might have said that.
Because there was no one, issue, and Mr. Chair, you've been involved in your past work in Boise and myself, that generally when you select an engineering firm and you go into construction, they've normally supplied the management for you.
Yep.
It seems like we're putting another layer in there and adding costs to the project. That's what kind of concerns me.
We're gonna be taking out, though,
Well, I would hope we would be taking theirs out of it.
we would be taking theirs out of it. They said that they would no longer be supplying that set of eyes that is gonna be managing the contract. I think we gotta also think a step ahead here, because now when we bid the project, we're still gonna be bidding this project in April. And one of the firms that did bid in the first round last June was Kraus Anderson. And then we also had the local contract, KBB was the only two contracts that we had. I don't know if any of these others has construction. They show that they have done construction at various airports in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Some of these may become bidders. I have no idea.
So we could end up with a contractor and this person being from the same.
Could, that is a possibility,
And
yes.
that's really what we don't want to do.
Well, certainly, I guess, I don't know that it's the fox guarding the hen house, but at the same time,
It's a different
there's
feel.
Yeah, it certainly has a degree of independence, is what I would see.
There's advantages and disadvantages. So
Yes.
either way you look at it, would be the oversight from a different company, but yet if you had one company to work with, they've got the whole package.
But I would ask Commissioner Wagenrud, you had Kraus Anderson being the CM at the Voyageurs National Park headquarters, and they were also a contractor. So they did both. They
I
filled
think
both.
that was before, this is the first time here that I've ever heard that you would have to separate.
But you had it there. They filled both roles there.
Right, yeah, but that you would hire a different company to oversee the contractor that you already hired. I thought they were responsible for coming in at you, which they never do. But, yeah, we were very happy with Kraus Anderson. But, we had to do the lead and some of those things. We were very happy with how that project turned out.
We didn't get a proposal from Thor Anderson Incorporated, I see, so.
No, or
Yeah.
Kim Jackson.
That's just what I need.
You out there with your hard hat on? Saving us money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we want to use as a criteria to judge. I think you started down that path, Commissioner Nevenin. I'm not sure if you've got some thoughts on what we ought to be using as our level of standard here. Also, Commissioner McBride, you started down that path, talking
Yeah,
about construction at the mill.
To me, I mean, there's two of them that jump out, and that would be Kraus Anderson and SEH, which two companies we're very familiar with, and I think they've done a good job. So to me, it's a question of, in my opinion, this board decide between those two, and that's just where I'm at.
Okay.
I agree.
Historically, if I may ask a question.
Please.
Historically, has there been, in regards to Paul's concerns, and I totally appreciate the observation and thought process, is that the quote-unquote is the same but different, or different, it's a different feel to it, what have you, pros and cons of it. Historically, do we know, if there have been conflicts of interest in situations such as this, or we've had, and I'm not arguing, Paul, I'm just asking, I think it's a legitimate concern, but I'm just asking, historically, has the industry had issues, has been conflicts of interest in hiring a construction manager working for you?
My own view of that, if I could, Mr. Chair, is getting back to exactly what Paul said. Whether there's a conflict or not, perception's reality with the public. If I
Sure.
were sitting out there, I'd be asking that question. I mean, it would be an issue that I think I would
Sure.
be concerned about, whether it's
Sure.
legitimate or not. It's an
Right.
appearance. And so
Yeah.
I agree with the statement.
So
there.
taking that one step further, Commissioner Pavlik, if we were to choose Kraus Anderson to be the CM, would we then rule him out as a contractor?
There's the dice.
Well, You know, in my.
To me, they would be almost my preferred.
Well, they at least bid the project this last time around.
And I'm not so sure we could even supersede that, but you know, what's missing for me is time, because, you know,
Sure.
we've got 4 very qualified. I mean, I read the other 2 too, and getting whoever brought that report you did from Green Bay kind of confirms, you know, they're all very qualified. I would have been more comfortable if we could have, besides this, sat down with each one of them before we made the final decision.
Well, and that's, we want to add a month to the process here, we certainly can. I mean, it
But
might
that's
put
the
our
downside.
bid project back into May instead of April. I mean, the timeline that our engineers and our architect are telling us right now is that they'd like to bid this in April.
I just have the feeling that this, any of the 4 would do the job, so to me, it's a preference of which one we move forward. They're all very qualified. They're all involved in airports.
And if I'm correct, then Kraus was doing the park headquarters, they used Shannon's.
They use a lot of our
Local contractors.
And we asked that when we first met with them, and I know we can't demand, but we asked them to consider using all of our local contractors in as many ways that they could, and they said they certainly would do that. And they did.
And there again, I think they've had a relationship with some of these, and I think that goes a long way, and utilizing our local resources and some cost savings, I would think, just as a result of it, so.
And that's why they have Gary Stallman in there as a reference.
Right.
Because
They do the whole
he was
deal.
very happy with how they did it.
And we don't have to worry about LEED certification, but we do have to worry about the state bond needs, that period, whatever they, so I'm
Yes.
sure they would always first be familiar with that.
Well, I sense positions are firming up here. Steve.
Yes, yep.
Time for me to grab a cookie.
I guess, you know, certainly, and I guess maybe for the television audience, SEH has been the engineering firm for the airport over the years. They have left the room, so we're having this discussion without their presence, which I think is certainly helpful. They are very familiar with the airport. They certainly understand. I'm trying to remember if Kraus Anderson did any work at the airport. I thought that we had them there for a kind of a revamping of the terminal.
That's correct.
And that was back
That's 12 years.
10 or 12 years ago. Yep. Okay, that's what I remember too.
Fine work.
And on page 8, they have a listing of some of the projects that they have participated in, and that's where I saw the National Park headquarters.
So they list each one of the finance managers and what they were involved with. Bob Fitzgerald and Mike Dozen and Steve Trudeau, each one of those projects.
Mr. Chair, do you know Bob Fitzgerald?
Yes, yeah. Only because my son and he played hockey together at the
That's how
Meeting.
you know him. Yeah, yeah.
That's the only reason I know.
They did the Sanford Center.
Sanford Center.
And the Good Sam here, of course, too, that's another big one.
Yes.
They've done a lot of huge projects for the region.
Now, Thor, as I look at page 10, do you have a copy of these?
I do. They're on my desk in my
On
office.
on the Kraus, I'm looking at he did the, Steve Trudeau on page 10 there, did the project at the airport, where we had the new entry airlock, the sidewalks, the paving.
Yes, exactly.
That remodel project.
That's
But I still can't remember the year.
You were the younger man then.
As a reality.
Yes.
So are we.
Yeah.
I forget, you know, that's a good memory, Bob. That's exactly, that is him for sure.
I've forgotten they had done the depot too.
How do we do this?
I think it's a judgment call, Commissioner, I don't know. Whoever you're gonna feel most comfortable with.
Are we all comfortable the cost is gonna be the same?
I think that it's gonna be relative,
Are we gonna have a better working relationship if it was SEH working back and forth with their design team as compared to having a totally different company? Do we have a better oversight if we had a different manager from a different company? I guess it's just how you feel, what
We've
you're
got
comfortable
three
with.
separate companies, SCH, the manager and the contractor, that'll be three separate entities. Because we don't know who the general contractor is.
You get an SEH as a design, whoever as your construction manager, and somebody else as a
Contractor.
contractor.
Is that what we want, or is that important?
There's pros and cons, just like that.
Should bring it either way.
I think it's what we're comfortable with in the end.
I just guess for myself, I mean, I'll put it out there first. I mean, I like Kraus Anderson, but just where we're at right now, I would say with SEH as the manager. That would be my opinion. And I'm very amenable if the board would feel Kraus Anderson would be the one or one of the other companies, but that's just where I'm at.
okay. Other thoughts?
Well, we know they can't be the general contractor.
SEH would not be the contractor.
Yeah, so we know the share is there.
They're separate divisions, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're not a contractor, they're construction.
I guess I think some of the question that I have is, and I think I agree with Commissioner McBride to the extent that they did the Brainerd Airport. I really think that's a very functional airport, and it seemed to be relatively economical. You know, I don't think it was lavish at all. I didn't see anything that was out of line. On the other hand, we've gone through a bidding process now, and now we're trying to kind of redesign, and so I'm wondering if somebody else's eyes might be helpful in trying to bring down the costs here. And I don't know if another trip to Brainerd would be helpful for commissioners. I've been there 3 times, so I looked the place over very carefully because I've been there for meetings also. So I don't know if a fresh set of eyes would be helpful. It's, any other thoughts?
So, yeah, the SEH firm would not be the general contractor, as we understand it today, right?
As I understand, they are not.
They don't have a construction arm.
Arm of,
They're
provide management services.
engineering and management services.
Right,
That's-
management services.
So who was the contractor on the Brainerd project?
It's Kraus Anderson.
It was
I don't
Kraus-
know.
I don't know.
Is it in there?
I don't think it was in there.
Wasn't it?
I didn't see.
I never saw it under Kraus Anderson that they never showed that one anyway. They did the Anoka,
You want me to find out?
Duluth.
Could you do that real quick?
Yeah, find out who the contractor was for.
Brainerd, right?
Thank you, Thor.
Thank you.
Kraus Anderson, they're constantly in
Yes, oh yes.
See their trailers.
Yeah, they do a lot of work at.
All the time.
Yeah. At
In the-
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
No, and Kraus Anderson did the Duluth.
Right back.
Airport terminal.
Right?
Right back.
Okay.
Right back.
They had never done one before.
Oh, geez, that's it.
Really? Interesting.
Well, this is difficult in that we've got, there's pluses and minuses with both of them, but I guess I'm leaning toward Kraus Anderson just because they do projects locally. We see what the end product is, and we've got some feedback from that. They use local contractors. Sure, the other ones may or may not be known for certain, and they've got a history of doing so. I think if anybody can drive the costs, probably they're probably the best position for that. Just purely so. I guess I'm leaning that way.
And you would be comfortable if they were the general contractor?
Sure.
Well, I think once you got once we've got this design down and we've got a contract price, then they're kind of locked in on that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we'll have to approve if there's gonna be any change orders, but I think we're gonna have it pretty well locked down by that time. I think getting to that contractor price. I've talked to both Ivan and David Stewart about their experience with Kraus, because we have them at the Rainy Lake Medical Center, and they give them absolute top rating. They just said that they knew where they were in the project at all times. They knew where their costs were, so they felt very, very comfortable with them as a contractor and project manager.
They had it, they were the project
Yes.
manager and the contractor.
We talked about, you're having to work around an operating business with 7 days a week operations. It's pretty tricky.
They did a lot of work at night
Yeah.
to get that project done at Super One.
I guess before I could support either one of them.
Yeah, I just don't have enough experience with the other two. I'm not saying they're not qualified, I think they are, but I don't know their history.
Who do we have here, was it last month or the month before?
That was
SCH.
Yeah, that was
Steve
Yep.
Gronkowski.
Yeah.
The
Or
Bobby
something.
Or
Yeah.
Good.
I was very impressed with him. He answered all the questions I had. So I'm trying to. Well, maybe I'll go along with Brian, Gail, and we'll leave it up to you.
I've only really had experience with Kraus Anderson, and my experiences with them have been good. And I liked that they were willing to use contractors as much as they could, and saw that they did. So I guess my vote would be Kraus Anderson.
So it kind of lights things up there. And I'm like Brian, I'm certainly comfortable with this. It's not a.
And I feel that way too. It's not gonna be any, but you want me to say who I prefer, but if we go with SCH, I'm completely comfortable with that, because I liked that person that came here too. I thought he was knowledgeable, he answered our questions, wouldn't have any problem. And he said he would be the person.
Steve would. Yeah. And I just think the site advantage with SEH is, if you went with him as a manager, and obviously they're very close to the engineering side and the design, and can readily work back and forth with them. And to me, that would be an advantage.
Do you feel that that person would be less likely to make drastic changes in the plan than someone else?
I think all these companies have fine credentials. I mean, they're not gonna do something that.
We're gonna be unhappy.
Exactly, that's the way I
And
feel.
if I may add, please. And I think too, I think Gail brings a good point up that, and whether it's at Kraus Anderson or an SCH or whoever is picked, I would feel I feel comfortable too of the encouragement of using local subcontractor or contractor. That obviously that would be an easy message to send, and I think they'd be very receptive to it.
Of course,
Go ahead.
this guy isn't picking it, it's a construction company that picks the contract.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it doesn't have as much to do with this part of it as with the general contractors, because they will be looking at price.
This
But I-
manager will have to work with whatever contractor
We.
bids and wins the
Or
project.
not we, because I would be here when you get that person. Yeah.
Is there other, I mean, other than the cost, is there any other information that we would be able to get? I mean, we could take and delay this for a week or two and try to gather more information and have a special meeting, but.
I just think, Mr. Chair, we're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And making a tough decision tougher.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Well, or if I could, Mr. Chair, one possibility could be, if we're gonna narrow it down to two, which it sounds, that's what I'm hearing from here, we could invite both of them for a special meeting for before we make our final decision, so that we've heard from, you know, we've heard from the SCH representative, we haven't heard from Charles Anderson. I just throw it out there, I mean, again, it's not gonna bother me if we don't. And I know the timelines are in consideration.
It's interesting, isn't it, scenario, because I'm betting, I'm guessing Kraus is gonna bid on the rebid. Sure.
I would think it would too.
It's actually kind of fun.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's kind of an interesting scenario, isn't it? You're playing the odds here.
But they are, I can't remember, were they our highest bid?
No, they were the lowest.
They were the
KBB
lowest.
was $1 million more.
Also, that's even more encouraging.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I don't know, to move it forward, I would make a
Yep.
motion then to accept Ross Anderson as the construction manager for the airline terminal remodel expansion project.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Nevenin to select Kraus Anderson as the construction manager services for the airline terminal remodeling expansion project. Is there a second to the motion?
Well, I was thinking one of you guys should say. Only because you're kind of on the other side. I've already
Commissioner
said
Nevenin
I
just
could
played an
accept
ace.
it.
Reshuffle the
Yeah.
deck.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Second by Commissioner Pavlik.
That makes me feel better.
Further-
I'm willing to.
Further discussion with regard to the motion or the contract?
Well, I just want to inform Councilor Roggenrud, I've been known to vote against my own motions.
No way, no.
Been there, done that too, yes, yeah.
I just, Mr. Chair, I just for myself, I don't have a problem with the motion in a second. But then, first, I'd hate to have a split vote on a very important vote like this. I mean, we have to be in concurrence, I believe. I mean, rather, not to go against Paul's motion, at this point, I would rather concurrence to the board before we have a motion. That's just what.
You want more discussion, or?
I just would like to have maybe some concurrence in, if we believe.
Well, you wanna call these folks to see if is there something more that that they can provide?
I think-
Contingent on something? I guess I'm not certain.
Well, I guess we have a motion and a second with Carl Sanderson. And I kind of prefer it going the other way, but I have no problem with Carl Sanderson, and I can concur and support that vote if we move to it. And I would, hopefully that we're firm, all members on who can make the selection. I don't want to do it on the 3-2 vote, that's just my opinion.
You never know till the vote's taken.
I understand that.
They had an organizational chart somewhere in here. Oh yes, page 7. So it appears that the project director would be Mike Dosen.
Page seven.
Page 7?
Seven, on the key, Carl Sanderson.
Right.
And if you go to McDosan, to his resume.
And then underneath that, they would be using Steve Trudeau and Gary Francisco.
McDosan only did Duluth Airport.
Well, that was only an $80 million project.
Yep. Westport. He did NERC. See that?
Yeah. We've had a lot of contractors up there though.
Well, he certainly has a lot of work around airports, we'll have to say that. Duluth, Monaco, Cirrus.
And Steve Trudeau was part of that Pine Falls terminal renovation and sidewalks and such.
I'm comfortable with the motion.
I was gonna say, they have an organizational chart too for SEH. Are we familiar with these It's on page,
That's
oh, no, that's Yule Tag, I'm sorry.
That's the thing.
I guess.
So they do have one here,
Did they have?
page 4, but I'm not sure.
Or when I looked at it,
Yeah, there is the biggest difference. I mean, they're gonna go out to a general contractor.
well, they didn't really attach names to it.
No, to be determined, I guess I'm a
Yeah.
little.
So
Well-
that's a good point.
I was under the understanding that when the city engineer Steve said that he would be the.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Could not be, he's principal charge and then you have project manager.
All right, further discussion? Call the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried unanimously.
Not easy, was it?
No.
No, it's a good discussion. Everybody had great input.
Well, without any actual numbers in front of you, you can use that as a,
Now the real work.
Yeah.
yeah.
You want to call back
Certainly.
SCH? And
And Paul can explain
I'll just tell them to do the.
Yeah. Rock, paper, scissors. Gambling.
Well, did we get an A or B?
well, it was a longer discussion than I anticipated. I narrowed it down to two firms, SEH and Kraus Anderson. And in the end, we go with Kraus Anderson for the CM services to work with you on the redesign. And they have a fair amount of experience, and they're here in the community quite often also, doing a number of projects in the community. So, and there's been some experience with them at the airport. They did do a project here, but none of us can remember how many years ago it was. And we have also the National Park headquarters. They're at the Green Lake Medical Center right now doing a $1 million project out there. So, Good Sam, they did that project. Super One, they came with recommendations from the owners of the Super One grocery where they did some remodel projects there. So we've chosen them.
Who is the contactor? Is it Pat? Pat Wertz or?
Bob Fitzgerald or?
Bob Fitzgerald, I think, is the,
Bob.
or Mike Dosen is a project director.
It's on the org chart.
Yeah, they have an org chart. We can give you a copy of this if that's,
Might be helpful for us.
Yeah.
Because we'll make contact with them right away.
Connection goes from Fitzgerald to SEH directly.
yeah.
I just, or if I could,
Please.
This guy's-
you know, I know I'm speaking for everyone here, this is not in any way a reflection on SEH.
No.
We're very comfortable with your work, it's just,
Yeah.
that's
and-
why it took us so long, because there was something to be said, we felt for a separation.
We, I can speak for both of us, I'm sure Bob will come in on this. We didn't have a horse in this race. I mean, I want to make that clear that, this is what you guys feel comfortable with, and this is a solid choice.
Good.
Very solid choice.
Yeah, I feel the same, and that's why we wanted to be out of the room too, because we don't want to have any part of it. But this is a separate, SEH Design Build is a separate company from us, so.
Well, Bob, back to your question when you walked in, A or B, you're the A. Just so you know.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for SEH, for your construction management side of it, doing, and Steve was here last, he did an excellent job.
Yeah.
I mean, I
He
know
really
we
did.
would not go wrong with SEH, but it's just because of Kraus Anderson with the director side, the chair said that there's so much work in the community that we're very comfortable with.
That's why it took us so long. It was a
Yeah.
hard decision.
And you know, with KA, they've done these terminal projects before. I mean, everybody knows about their experience at Duluth. They've done a lot of CM services for the Duluth Airport Authority. They, understand working with commissions just like you guys. So, like I said, it's a solid choice.
Well, I'm hoping you'll find a way to get $1 million from Hibbing that they don't need. Flyer rater.
All right, we'll move to the reports from members. Is there anything that anyone wants to share?
I just have a question, and I can't remember if it was at the LASAP or the McCall meeting. One of the things on the agenda was they were gonna talk about pilot shortage. Did you have any new information?
There really no new information. There still seems to be a question of why there is a pilot shortage. However, there is not seeing as many students going to school, and I think they've come down to the point that when you start out at 22,000, you can't live and pay back your school loans, and I think that low salary beginning until you get to be in the second seat, until you get to be in the captain's seat, that you start to make some real money, and these regional carriers are just not paying, and so folks are jumping to the big airlines as soon as they can. The other thing that's also causing it is the FAA has increased, and I don't remember the number of hours.
Rest periods.
Rest periods, but also you
Yeah,
have to have so many hours.
So many hours.
Prior to getting into the seat.
In the right seat, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the Buffalo issue, right?
Yeah.
Which came
all
right
of it.
after
Yes,
that
sir.
airline crash.
It's an absurd move on the FAA's part.
I want to say 1,500
Yep,
hours now.
correct. Used to be 1,000 minimum.
Used to be 1,000, okay.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
huge
now
cost.
that Eastern Airlines is putting their wings back on, coming into the business.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's gonna be
So
another.
I'm starting that up again.
Yep.
What's the minimum
Eastern
in the left
Airlines.
seat?
Oh, generally about 4,000 hours.
It's not up to me.
And I don't think they're getting the people coming out of the military. I mean, the military side is not as big as.
I
it
think
used to
you're
be.
absolutely right there.
Nope.
It takes a long time to build up to 4,000 hours.
You bet.
That's, you can't get that pay jump that you're talking about. So,
Yep.
plus the training was very expensive. Ron Beckland's son, you've been through it, Kenny. Very expensive.
What it is now compared to what it is then, we
Yeah.
couldn't do it right now, we couldn't do it. with
There's,
it right now.
there's many 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 hour guys in the right seats in the majors that are still in the right seat. Absolutely.
But at North Dakota, which used to be a huge school of students, now mainly trains foreign airline pilots, and they have very few actual students because of the cost.
100,000 a year.
Oh, it's hell shoes.
100 for a full aviation package, 100 a year. And to Gail's point is, these foreign nationals, the countries donate huge monies to
Underwrite their costs.
absolutely. It's a money machine for them.
Well, and not only that, when my son was there, he came out of the school and went into their own training program, he flew as an instructor so that he could get those hours. And now if they don't have those kids, or they don't,
There's nobody to train.
the whole way that they did it before is gone. And when he had enough hours, then he applied at Mesaba, and then moved to Mesaba for 8 years till he had enough hours to apply to Delta. Yeah, so there was a light at the end of the tunnel that I don't think is
There.
there, at least not as soon as it was.
All right, let's move to, excuse me.
Just
Go
one
ahead.
thought,
Commissioner Levin.
was having a conversation with somebody about our airport and also our health service. And the question was raised, approximately how many life flights do we get in here a month? And I thought that was a great question, and I don't know if we track that, but
I
I'm
bet
curious.
it's 25, 20 to 25 probably.
A month?
Yeah, 20 a month. 20 a month's probably.
Going to two different locations?
Yeah, sometimes 3 different locations. Sometimes fixed wing assets, majority are helicopter assets. If the weather is quote unquote good, it's a helicopter asset. If it's bad, it's a fixed wing asset.
Bemidji and Duluth?
Yep, majority, vast majority go to Duluth.
They're patrolling the border, spying on us.
Yeah.
Well, that is another good a number,
Yeah.
because some days it seems like it's here, almost every
Multiple
day.
times a day,
Well, and it's
absolutely.
another reason when people say, I never use that airport.
Oh, they
Say,
use it.
You know what's available, that
Right.
light flight that might take you out of here when you have a heart attack, is because we have that airport there.
All right, good point, thank you. Next meeting, do you want to meet on the 24th of December?
Perfect. How about the 24th and the 25th? Never mind,
This-
never mind, never
this is
mind.
gonna
All
be-
right.
This is a tough month to schedule.
Oh.
They would be short meetings.
Yo, I guarantee.
I think it'd be tough to get a quorum.
Yeah.
I bet I wouldn't be here on the 24th.
So,
I know the week of the 15th, we're pretty heavy right now. Tuesday we have board.
I know the 17th, there's a Convention Visitors Bureau meeting, there's a Beach Economic Development Authority meeting.
We have a clean water board meeting. The 18th.
We've got corrections.
18th?
18th corrections.
And ARDC, right?
That's the ARDC.
ARDC's the day before.
Yeah, the 18th.
So 8th through the 17th, I think we're all, provided at least I'm quite solid.
How about the 19th on a Friday? Friday morning.
Friday, or 19th? Is that corrections?
How was that with you guys?
That's corrections, I guess I meant through the
We might be
19th.
having our office party on the
Yeah, how about
18th,
22?
so not well.
Not well.
Okay, but
Or Monday, well, let's see, yeah, Monday morning.
That'd be best for me.
you don't have a council meeting?
I think that's an honest and legitimate,
That
not a
was-
meeting.
Then we're not
That's
having.
not the 22nd?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're
And
gonna
we-
back.
Yeah, morning meeting, whatever you want.
Can
Well,
you make
let's-
I don't know,
I can make it, let's do morning though.
Well, do we want to start
I can't
late?
do the 18th.
How about the 22nd? It's a Monday.
Excuse me, 22nd.
The 22nd I can do.
You'd recover by then.
Would a later start be of any advantage? I mean, if we did a 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock better for you guys?
It doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, it actually is a little better.
9 o'clock?
Or, so you just wanna
Thank
sleep
you.
in, it's Christmas, right?
He needs a little more sleep than I do.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I can-
Whatever
I
works
need
for
to
you
get the
guys.
boys to daycare.
No, I love
To the
I
plane.
love this, you're making earlier arrangements, and the only one not here is Sean, who has to fly an airplane.
remember, we have a FAA conference call that day at 1 o'clock on the 22nd also. So I don't know if staying here for the conference call, if that would be at any advantage. I'm just trying to think, if we have a meeting at 9 o'clock, you're done
Might
out of
be
here.
advantageous to have us here,
'Cause
to work with you.
Were you gonna go to the
Or were we gonna
ADO's
go to
office?
ADO?
We
Probably we're gonna go to
would,
ADO.
we would, and then we'll need, to show them drawings at that point.
So do we need to go back to 8 o'clock and then, so you can get
That
out
might
of
be
here by
better.
10 and can you get back to the cities in
Yeah,
that
it's
time?
Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half flight for us to get back, and then we'll go right to the ADO.
What time are you to the ADO's office?
1, so we have to be back at 11:30, so we have to leave around 10. Is it at 1?
Yes, it's 1 o'clock.
Press
That's
the
what I
easy
had.
You could do their business first.
Yep, and we could do the business first and you could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay.
Let's go back to
So
8.
8 o'clock
8
on
o'clock
December
on Monday,
22nd.
the 22nd.
Get you out of here early anyway.
It's a Monday morning, folks, you gotta remember that, so,
Yep, got it down.
all right,
You better tell Joe.
yep.
22nd.
I need a copy of this.
Nothing further to come before the commission at this time, we will adjourn. Thank you all for your
Thank you.
participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get a copy of this.
These are all